Friends and dear participants, I, Lalit Basin, I welcome you to the Economic Times Legal Leadership and Crisis Management Summit, the second panel discussion of this very important and significant summit. Thanks to Economic Times, in this session we have very eminent panelists who are experts in their respective fields, but at the same time, they are like generalists, you see, because being in house lawyers, they have to be familiar not with just one line of specialization, but with various lines, you see. As a matter of fact, in house counsel, they are virtually the backbone of any economy and any economic activity because the commercial contracts, you see, the backup services, everything depends upon the in-house counsel who are advising the big corporates and the multinational companies. So it's a very timely initiative undertaken by the Economic Times, and to line up, you see, such eminent people, eminent in-house counsel is also a great achievement. In this, we have three very eminent ladies who are participating as panelists. And someone said, you see, that every woman is a born lawyer. And if you add to that, you see, the law degree which they get and the experience which they get, I think they become outstanding lawyers. So my personal tribute to the three ladies who are participating. This should not derogate, you see, from the eminent role our two men panelists are, you see, going to give their presentation, give their views. They are perfectionists in their own right. So this summit, you see, is highlighting the leadership and crisis management summit. All of you are aware as to what is the crisis that we are facing. The crisis arises out of, you see, the pandemic that we are facing. We have faced now for nearly, I think, 5 months, and still there does not seem to be any end to that. It is being prolonged. We don't know for how long. But more importantly, what would be the impact you see on the in the coming months with regard to the crisis management? How do we handle it? The government is doing its own job. Whether it is correct, it is not correct, we're not going to go into all those issues, whether it is adequate, whether it is satisfactory or not. But the corporates, you see, have to gear themselves up in order to strategize as to what they would be doing and what they have been doing so far and what they would be doing in future, particularly the next 5-6 months. The impact may not be just limited to 5-6 months. It may, you see, go over to the next year, 2021, and possibly beyond. Therefore, these in-house counsel who are our panelists today, they will give us, you see, their point of view as to what they have been doing. So I have requested the panelists. I'll just give a very, very brief introduction because they are very eminent people in their own right. Mr. Pandurang Acharya is a general counsel and has an enriching professional experience for about 16 years as both in-house counsel and a practicing counsel. He has in his in-house career associated with mobile store, Videocon telecommunication, Vodafone, Flipkart, and is currently heading legal compliance for Swiggy. We are all familiar because we enjoy the food, you know, that they bring to us. He's also in the e-commerce committee of INBA, that is the Indian National Bar Association. And he specializes in contracts, litigation, IP rights, and compliances, and policy making for emerging e-commerce businesses. Welcome, Mr. Acharya. Then we have Mr. Guru Raj Raghavan Rao. He has triple qualifications, you see. triple qualification in the sense that he's, of course, a law graduate, LLB, LLM, but he's also company secretary's course he's done Institute of Company Secretaries. And then he's also done his commerce from the Mumbai University. At present, he's heading the legal team of Sony Pictures Networks India Private Limited, Mumbai, and is legal counsel in the band of vice president. Earlier, he was with Reliance Broadcast Network Limited in Mumbai, and also he worked with GlaxoSmithKline and UTV Software, McDonald's, and Thomas Cook. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you, Mr. Rao. And our next panelist, by way of introduction, is Ms. Manjari Chaudhary. I think she needs no introduction at all, but still, for the sake of formality, I have to complete, you see, for those participants who may possibly not have heard of Ms. Manjari Chaudhary. She is a seasoned general counsel with over 2 decades of experience, a Master of Law from the University of London, and then she moved in-house with multinational conglomerates like General Electric, where she had the unique experience of being the general counsel for plastics, healthcare, etc. She has to her credit multi-million-dollar complex transactions, mergers, joint ventures, and acquisitions that have helped businesses grow in challenging environments like what we are facing today. 2 years ago, Manjari joined Maruti Suzuki, the iconic and leading car maker, as executive director and its first woman general counsel. Leading a team of 40 professionals, she works closely with the board, which is so important. You see this linkage between the council and the board and the management, the CEO and the top management as a trusted partner. Welcome, Manjari Chaudhary. Ms. Smitha Chandrasekhar, she is general counsel with a demonstrated history of working across various industries, including but not limited to logistics, IT, healthcare, asset finance, audiovisual in the Asia Pacific region. At present, with Harman International India Private Limited, which is a Samsung company in the capacity of director legal, and she foresees and oversees all legal aspects of the company ranging from contract negotiations, overall compliance, privacy, litigation, employment, real estate, regulatory, legal training workshops, global and strategic projects. Then we have Lubinisha Saha. She floats in the air, in the skies, and it's a privilege to have her. She is the head of legal and compliance of India and South Asia for Airbus. I think everyone is familiar with Airbus, you see, because we do fly either Airbus or the Boeing. She joined Airbus on 19th of February 2019. She leads a small team, a very small team, but that shows the sense of responsibility and the responsibility that she carries with her. Small team of 2 members. But see the geographical area she covers and is the focal point for legal matters across divisions, function, and compliance in the region. Region means the entire Asia Pacific region. Since the past year, she has led many compliance initiatives like Own Compliance, Speak Up campaigns, and a compliance video with leadership messaging to build a coherent compliance culture in India. And Airbus India legal compliance team has been adjudged as top in-house legal team in 2019 by Legal 500. And before that, she had worked with GE and Delhi International Airport Private Limited, that is DIAL, and the well-known international law firm Baker and McKenzie, and Cairn India, and J. Sagar and Associates. So welcome, Ms. Lubinisha Saha. With this, the introduction part is over. So I now move on, you see, to request our panelists, all of them, for 3 minutes each. Please give your own perceptions, your views about the topic, about the situations which exist today, what you foresee in future in 3 minutes. And I would start with Mr. Acharya.
Thank you, Mr. Basing. Thank you, all the panelists on the panel, and also thank you, ET Legal. It is an unprecedented situation. We have never foreseen there could be a pandemic and of this scale, and we were to deal with that. So we haven't prepared for this. I think none of us, or maybe many, have not prepared for this pandemic situation. The crisis attached to this pandemic also have been, brought us new challenges and the new lessons. I'm representing an e-commerce company which is dealing in food and hyperlocal delivery services. We were essential services during this pandemic, but at the same time, this has have several impact on the business, how we operate, and we need to change the way we want to operate in the future. Forget how we operate currently. We had to focus more on how we can really help in dealing with crisis for the company in this testing hours. The day we have this pandemic lockdown being announced, I had a call within our legal leadership team with my immediate reportees. We all thought this is the time we could support the company in delivering legal services even better speed. So we formed legal task force, which will provide legal services within 2 hours time from the time of request. So that was very fast. I mean, it is even important for us to provide that such short turnaround time, because we are into delivery services, and that our deliveries mostly get over in an hour's time. Customers' expectations and the business is also will be running in a very fast-moving manner. So, basis this, we have decided to go for a legal task force, and legal task force have handheld company. Throughout the tenure, we have been reviewing all the government orders, central government, state governments, district and commissioner of police, and DC orders. We were processing all the information, providing company an overview of what you can do where, right? Each of the city wise. This was mammoth, time consuming, but we were at it, and we have worked more than 14 hours a day, and we could still manage to process all these documents and then make some overall purview to the company to decide or make decisions quickly on a daily basis. Not only that, we also have supported in processing applications, processes for certain permissions that we were to, there are certain permissions attached to movement of individuals that we did during this pandemic time as a team effort. And most importantly, during the lockdown, rental waiver, and then we were going back and reviewing all contracts for force majeure. How do we implement? None of our contracts were very robust in terms of dealing with this pandemic situation, and there were a lot of kiosk. Actually, but however, we had flavored it through some commercial terms and commercial discussions, and we have sailed through well, I think. This more of a preparation. I think this pandemic crisis never gave any of us a chance to be prepared, and we had to act immediately when things come. So I end my 3 minutes talk with that. Over to you, Mr. Basin.
Thank you. I think in your brief introduction, you highlighted you gave us very useful and informative idea about the mammoth task, in your words, you see, what you have undertaken. It is remarkable, you see. Now I request MS Manjari Chaudhary, you see, to please give her brief presentation of 3 minutes. Manjari, please.
Thank you, Dr. Vaseem, and thank you for this very warm introduction. And I'm absolutely honored by Economic Times to be a part of this very esteemed panel on a very, very relevant topic in this times of COVID. Like my colleague Gurucharya mentioned, nobody had anticipated a crisis of this kind. It's highly unprecedented. We had looked at crises of different types, natural disasters, others, where you kind of are a little prepared and you understand that this is the kind of crisis management that you can look at. But this was completely took everybody by surprise. Starting from its epicenter in China, it kind of rapidly spread pretty much across the globe. And we had not seen something of this enormity perhaps after the Second World War, where the entire globe has got caught up in this. Along with that, it has severely impacted the macroeconomic, scenario. It is, we are everybody is now very globalized. The world has completely shrunk. Economy is largely dependent across the oceans on each other. And suddenly you found that everything was coming to a grinding halt. And all of us who are in the business industry, and entrepreneurs, everybody has begun to feel the pinch of this. For me particularly, coming from my background with General Electric, which is a global company, and now with Maruti Suzuki, which is one of the largest automobile manufacturers in the country, we run a mammoth ship, so to speak. But when you have to suddenly bring that ship to a halt, it takes time to halt it. One, I realized that it is not a switch on and a switch off thing. So once the lockdown orders came in, we had to immediately comply with it. But there was a lot of back-end preparation that was required to be able to close down and shut down the manufacturing plants and units. And an equally mammoth task was that when the lockdown was beginning to ease, to bring the factories back to their feet and ramp up production. So it was an equally difficult exercise, both sides. The interesting part that we felt, of course, everybody started feeling that the pandemic was going to take a little more severe shape somewhere by the mid of March. So I suppose we'd also gotten into the groove where we had started putting some teams together and started looking at it. And of course, we were a little more prepared when the lockdown hit, but immediately, I think the crisis management team came into being. Of course, like all my colleagues will bear me out, it was something unusual. Even the crisis management plan had to be tweaked a little to suit the nature of the pandemic and to see what kind of risks and what kind of things that we need to look at in order to ensure not only compliance with the government directives, but also a level of business continuity as to when we decide to open up. And the most important thing out of all of this was, I think, management of your employees and your workforce, managing their health and safety, keeping their morale high, because suddenly you realize that there was so much of workforce that was in distress. The government coming out with certain regulations, and we have a workforce of almost about 35,000 people, right? So just to keep a track of them, to keep them motivated, to make sure that some of them who wish to go home, mostly we try to accommodate them. That task was huge. And during the lockdown period, I think when production was completely stopped, nobody was going into office, we were all at home. The most important task was of making sure that we continue to keep the health and safety of our employees very, very as a matter of priority. The second biggest priority was to start putting down understanding what the government directives were and studying them and creating the standard operating processes, which would be very essential when the company decided to come into the unlock situation, because nothing could happen overnight. You had to put these things in place. There was a lot of benchmarking we did. We talked in the industry. We looked at global best practices before we tried to put down our SOPs in place. And then it was very important to make sure that they were disseminated across. So during the lockdown, we made sure all our employees were up to speed with it. We trained them. They were very minutely managed. And I'm happy to say that, it was a very, very strong effort, which even Government of India kind of appreciated. And the third most important thing was that the employees had to suddenly decide to work from a remote location. And a company like ours, which has a legacy of a public sector undertaking and is predominantly a manufacturing company, we were all working. It was a done thing that you work from your office. And obviously production happens on the shop floor. But we were very much into physical meetings, etc. Suddenly we had to shift gears. And we had to look at, bring to the table all the technology that we had at hand. We had to, improvise and innovate. And suddenly people in our company who were so used to physical meetings, suddenly I realized within a span of a week, everybody got used to the WebExes and the team meetings, etc. And along with that came the whole, as HR and as legal and all of us, got together as management to see that how are you going to ensure a level of discipline amongst employees who were never used to working from home. So working from home doesn't mean a holiday, but it means work from home and the challenges that came up across that. So I think those were the things that we managed in this crisis. And then, of course, the unlock opened and the unlock started and we had to ramp up production. And during this time, 2 seconds more I'll take is that while we were doing this, we also decided that since we were not producing cars, and cars are certainly not an essential goods or service, we decided to support some manufacturers who were doing ventilators and who were doing PPE kits and masks. And we gave our expertise in terms of ramping up production in these areas. And I'm happy to say that during those times, we really, really helped some companies to do a great job on this. So I think it's a new field, it's a new area, and we will progress as we go along, sir. So this is my initial.
Thank you, Manjari. I think you rightly said it took everyone by surprise, and it was like a second or a third world war coming up, you see, which has been thrust on us. And this switching on and switching off, that is a very, very difficult exercise. But your company seems to have, under your guidance, taken the right steps, particularly with regard to health and safety of the employees, which is most important. Now I will move on to Ms. Lubinisha Saha. Lubinisha, please, your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hussain, and thank you so much for a very kind introduction. They were really nice words. Thank you. It's good to be here on this panel and talk about something very relevant. I think the first thing I want to say is that the seminar is very aptly titled, right? Legal leadership and crisis management. It's not just talking about the crisis, but actually managing it and showing leadership in that. And generally, when you talk about crisis, it becomes a business solution or it becomes something which is not the domain of legal or lawyers. But I think it's much more than that. It's about showing legal leadership with regard to managing crisis. So I think it's very rightly and aptly titled and rightly framed. So that's my first point. I think as a sector, everybody knows and everybody is correctly assessed that aviation is badly impacted. It's something which is, if planes aren't flying, you aren't selling, and nothing much is happening, right? So as a sector, it's gravely impacted, and unlike quick consumer goods, it's a long cycle sector, which means you have your back orders to process and the future orders which will come in. If they don't come in, you don't sell. So it's not of scenario planning, it's a lot of madness to deal with. And Airbus being a European company, we had COVID as an issue everywhere, right? It spread much more in Europe as well. So as an organization and as a function, clearly crisis management was the order of the day. And like my esteemed panelist also said, I think it wasn't the usual policy, it wasn't the usual SOP, wasn't the usual solutioning. It was a lot of out-of-box thinking. It was a lot beyond legal, some semi-commercial, some semi-legal, some interpretation, some renegotiation, some thinking outside the box, and all of that. And I think lawyers played a very critical part because you're part of the crisis management team, and also helping the business coming up with these, off the cuff ideas. So as a company and as an organization and as a function, we relooked, revised, and replanned the strategy across, and a lot of scenario planning as well, right? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if timelines change? How long? How much? When? So all of these things, which are very critical in terms of the crisis management plan. So that's my 2 minutes or 3 minutes for you.
Thank you, Lubinisha. It was wonderful, how your company, which has multi-presence, you see, all over the world, the how they engaged in crisis management and how you did that in India and in your region, which comes under you, and you replanned your strategies in order to meet this situation, unprecedented situation. So thanks a lot. I will now request Mr. Guru Raja Raghav Rao to please make his presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Basin. As we all are aware that both the central and the state government have taken several unprecedented and drastic measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus, specifically in the context of the broadcasting and entertainment sector. Because my company is into broadcasting, I would specifically confine my talk during this session to the broadcasting side. The lockdown and prohibitions imposed by the government, along with the stalling of the film and television program productions, sporting events, and other industry events, shuttering of cinema halls and theaters across the country, and the social distancing and stay-at-home advisories from authorities has severely affected operations in the media and entertainment industry, resulting in reduced revenue prospects for broadcasters like us. I would put that the impact of COVID-19 on the broadcasting and entertainment industry is a mix of pain, hope, and opportunity. For our company, advertising and subscription revenues are the two major sources of revenue. However, we have seen corporate advertisement spends witnessed a sharp decline, adversely impacting the advertisement revenues. The general entertainment and sports channels have witnessed a sharp fall of around 60% in the advertising revenues during the first quarter. Further, the collection of subscription revenues was also badly impacted since the cable operators found it difficult to collect the same from the subscribers due to the lockdown. The impact of the pandemic was so grave that our company had to discontinue 5 of its television channels. And the government had declared television broadcasting and distribution as an essential service to ensure that people who are virtually confined to their homes during the lockdown period are provided with information and entertainment. Thus, we ensured that there is continuous and uninterrupted retransmission of signals of all our channels during the lockdown period. The current lockdown has led to a surge in consumption of OTT platforms as consumers stay home. Further, with the shutdown of cinema halls and expected aversion to outdoor viewing of films, large OTT platforms are also being considered by the film producers for their film releases. We have seen the demand for home consumption mediums, including digital streaming services, is likely to rise during this period. Given a rise in the demand for content and increasing viewership and the halts in production of new content, existing content is likely to become more valuable and in time may increase competition not only for existing film and television libraries but also for the new content. From our company's business perspective at this juncture, our role as an in-house counsel had become very critical because we had to carefully evaluate all the key contracts and the feasibility of invoking force majeure provisions, which normally are routinely included in all the contracts. But here we had to specifically go through all the contracts like talent contracts, content partnership, licensing and acquisition, equipment hire, studios, etc. This was a very Herculean task. So we had to see whether we can take leeway and shelter under this clause to have our obligations under the contract negated. So while the media and entertainment sector is currently grappling with various challenging issues, as things return to normalcy, I personally believe that eventually this sector may be amongst the first few to recover and continue to provide to everyone across all mediums and segments the much needed entertainment. That's all. I think I have overshoot my 3 minutes stipulated time. Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
No, no, thank you, Mr. Rao. I think I am one of those who has suffered because of the stalling, no movies and all that, because I love going to the movie theaters to watch the movies, And I think you have very rightly pointed out that this has caused a severe setback to the entertainment industry as a whole, and the broadcast, particularly the broadcasting and the entertainment sector. But you also pointed out, and that is very important observation, that you have suffered pain, but still you have hope, and you think this as an opportunity, you see, to move further and possibly improve upon, you see, what was the pre-COVID situation. And going through the contracts, yes, finding out what is the force majeure clause, whether it would apply, it would not apply, what is the language of those. I think that was a very important and uphill task, which you see your team under your leadership had been doing. So thank you for your very relevant observations. And now we'll have Smita Chandrasekhar, you see, to give her presentation.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this wonderful panel. I think my co-panelists have already given out a lot of important points with respect to this. So, I can probably value add by saying a couple of things, short and sweet. One is, I think from a business perspective, we sort of at the management level looked at the medium-term measures, one, and the long-term measures, two. What I mean by medium-term measures are, things which require immediate attention, things which require immediate change, keeping in mind the, impact of the level of business. And next, we took up this, long-term, sort of measures, which, kind of, in the long run helped thrive the business, right? So these were the two things. And apart from that, again, from a business perspective, we did take some decision based on the geographic locations, right? For example, the COVID-19 situation in some countries, for example, were mature in the sense that they were grappling initially, but then over a period of time they somehow managed to kind of bring that situation under control, whereas there are certain geographies even now which are actually battling, right? So that was the second thing. And apart from that, we did bring about a lot of change the way we dealt with contracts. For example, one of the major change was we revamped the entire CMS, the contract management system. Like Mr. Panduranga Acharya, rightly mentioned, the aim for a council is to turn around the contracts as soon as possible, right? Because that's the need of the hour. So when you have a robust CMS, the intervention of councils, becomes less, so that the actual council can manage the other issues, on the ground. So that was one thing that we did from a legal perspective. Apart from that, to support the business, whatever needed to be done, be it a lease agreement to start with, be it this entire supply chain module, changing of the contracts, amending the contracts. Apart from looking at the force majeure clauses, we also obviously, like any other company, looked at the finance portion where as and when required, we deferred payments, and the sorts. And most importantly, as a council, it's my responsibility to also make sure that the employees are okay, right? So, for example, from an employee perspective, there was no work from home policy, right? So because this was an unprecedented thing. So we started focusing on reviving, revamping internal policies and trying to see what else is it that, we can come up with to help support the employees as well as help support the business. That was one of the major transformation that, we kind of brought about. And I think everything people have already covered. And of course, from a regulatory perspective, my primary responsibility was to make sure, that I updated the business as and when regulatory changes occurred, so that the business kind of, was on top of it. So with that, I sort of hand it over to Dr. Basi now. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. You rightly pointed out about your mid-term and the long-term measures that your company, under your advice, had undertaken, and how your legal team provided support to the business, you see, to the decision makers, and sometime by changing the contracts, sometime by even treating the contracts as frustrated, and where the force majeure would apply, would not apply. That was the right type of guidance to came. But most significantly was your comment about the employee's perspective, that no work from home. So that is really remarkable, the way you have succeeded in uh, providing, this guidance to your company. So with that, now we move on, you see, to the questions which I will pose, because uh, in what form your organization has developed response to the crisis, that is the plan, response structure, and the business continuity plan. So some of you have already covered these aspects in your initial presentation, so those need not be repeated. So I am requesting Ms. Manjuri Chaudhary to be followed immediately by Mr. Guru Raja Rao and Ms. Smita Chandrasekhar to respond to this question briefly. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Basine, again. Of course, we did touch upon it, but I would just go into a little more specifics regarding the question. The response plan had to be immediate, and it involved a kind of a war room kind of an activity in which the entire management, along with the board, was also involved to just be updated and to give its suggestions. And we do have the chairman, Mr. Bhargav, who absolutely understands this business like no one else does, and his contribution is always very welcome. I think we addressed it at a few important levels. The business continuity plan actually consisted of the following. The first was to make sure that the health and the safety of our employees was intact. In order to do that, we kind of created the SOPs, which were based on the regulatory requirements by the Ministry of Home Affairs, as well as all the, the separate states that we were functioning in, which is Haryana and Gujarat. And to put those in place and get all our workforce familiarized and sensitized to that. See, because nobody, we do deal with about over 10,000 or 12,000 workforce that comes into the plant. Just to get them familiarized with this, and to put, our scale is very large, and therefore to make sure that your SOPs even work effectively, I think a lot of planning and a lot of drill, the dry runs have to be done in such an effective way so that it can't go wrong. Because even if one person gets infected, that becomes a challenge to the organization. So I think the first part was that. Then we went into the business side of it. I think we looked at the supply chain, and the finance and the liquidity was very important to see that if there were any challenges on that side. Mercifully, the organization is, has the wherewithal to be able to stand this. But nonetheless, I have to admit that, for the first time since we became a public listed company, we reported a loss in the quarter. That was that happened for the first time in the history of Maruti. So it is extremely, it was quite a milestone kind of a thing for us, which we took extremely seriously. But to understand supply chain, I think in Maruti, we did talk of, of course, we get our stuff from overseas. So that, of course, temporarily became a challenge. But we did a lot of work with the government in trying to ensure that, the supplies could be restored as quickly as possible. We have supply chain even within the country that was in different states and different containment areas. So there was a problem to manage the logistics from that end. But I have to admit that, I have seen in Maruti the idea of keeping your supplier as close as possible to you. And when the Prime Minister has been talking about go vocal for local, I think to a large degree we've kept our tier one suppliers. We give them space within the premises of our factories, so that we don't lose out on the supply chain and inventory, which is such an important aspect. So I think the contribution during that time was only about bringing them up to speed, sharing all our best practices with our larger ecosystem, be it our supply chain people, be it our dealers and service dealers and our sales people across the board. The third most important thing was about technology adoption, quick adoption of technology, whether it was in all our business processes as also from work from home. We had to quickly gear up to that and put that into place. And then was the business planning to start thinking, because everyone first thought that it was a 2 months or a 3 month affair and it would end and things would be back to normal. But very quickly all of us realized that that was not going to be the case, and we really didn't see an end in sight. So to be able to work with the new normal became a very important aspect, as also understanding we did a scenario planning of 3 months, 6 months and a year down the line. How do you manage costs? How do you, budget for things which are which you can do away with, but then certain innovation and growth, long-term perspectives were kept in mind to see how we would be able to, you have to spend on things that will be able to make the company more agile as and when the time came and the business resumed. So I think
that's very important. That's very important. Now,
yes, usually we all tend to have a very short-term view of this. So while on one hand you have to manage the immediate crisis, you also have to simultaneously start looking in the long term so that you're equally well prepared when the time comes for the business to resume. So those are my certain thoughts.
Thank you. Now, let us see what Mr. Guru Raja Rao has to say about the how his organization has developed the response, to the crisis.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Basin. So our organization had geared up, in fact, and from our employees' working perspective, we had well in advance, even before the government declared the initial 21 days national lockdown for the first time. Our company had, on a trial basis, implemented work from home for about 50% of employees on from 9th March itself. So thereafter, basis the success, the same was extended to all the employees, including the senior management, with effect from 16th March. So we were well within, before the national lockdown was declared, even 1 week before that, all our employees were working from home. And here, technology had played a very critical role in this pandemic situation. Our IT department had done a commendable job in ensuring that all the employees are able to work seamlessly from the comfort of their houses. Because this is the first time and it's very unprecedented, and work from home is not a norm actually from an Indian working perspective. And hence the IT department ensured that all the employees seamlessly work at the comfort of their houses. So what we have done is we have installed Microsoft Teams in all the laptops of the employees, and the conducting of meetings is being done seamlessly through this wonderful Microsoft Teams. And for the convenience of all the employees, the company has also provided wireless stereo headsets so that it gets eased out. The communication process gets eased out. Now,
in a way, you anticipated, that this is not going to be a short-term thing. It is going to last long. And
absolutely right.
You prepared for that. Very good.
Yes, absolutely right, Dr. Besson. You are absolutely bang on that. We anticipated that this won't be getting over in 1 or 2 months. It is a long drawn process. So we have to gear up the process and ensure that the work is being rendered seamlessly. Content programming suffered a lot in view of the sudden lockdown, since shooting of all the programs came to a complete standstill. We did not have inventory of new content post the first week of April, because no one anticipated in that sense that all of a sudden this lockdown situation would be declared, and hence the inventory level went down and we were not having any new content to be broadcasted. Hence, what we thought it prudent, we had to bring back some of our most iconic and popular shows in an attempt to keeping our subscribers engaged during the lockdown period. And fortunately, this worked out very well. And as was evident from the viewership data published by the Broadcasting Audience Research Council of India, which publishes ratings, and which stated that the television viewing has increased over 70% during the lockdown period. So we ensured that the consumers are glued to the television set. However, despite viewership on television channels and digital platforms increasing, monetization and revenue earnings of these mediums are seeing a downward curve. as revenues in the media and entertainment sector depend largely on advertising spends from other industries. The impact of the pandemic and the global recession on various industries such as e-commerce, manufacturing, financial services, fashion and retail, automobiles, hospitality. These were the corporates who were heavily advertising on our television channels. So because
I
of
think
lack of
your
advertising,
company, your
yeah.
company should bid for IPL to get some more revenue. IPL.
That's IPL was our property, Dr. Besin, for the 10 years back, for the 10 years period actually. But now we lost it to Star last year. So it's the property of Star now, IPL. But yes, so because of this advertising drop, we had seen a revenue drop. Then the weekend advertising revenues, we believe will moderate the revenues and profit margins for broadcasters like us during the first 6 months of this financial year. And we hope that there would be some recovery in advertising revenues from the third quarter because of the unlock scenario and things pretty much returning to normalcy. However, one good thing which happened is that the revenue shortfall was largely mitigated through savings in the content programming cost since there was no fresh content.
Correct.
The next few months we feel is challenging because now the production lines are being geared up, but the revenues will are still to catch up. However, fresh content production would always remain a key challenge for us. Our company also produces movies, so we could not release Shakuntala Devi in theaters because of the shutdown of theaters. So here we saw an opportunity, and what we did is we released it in the OTT platform, and it was one of the most liked Indian film based on the
It's a brilliant movie. I have seen it
yeah.
myself.
That's
Brilliant.
yeah. Basis the audience engagement also, it was rated one of the best viewed Indian movies. We also did is in the larger interest of the subscribers and to support the initiatives taken by the government of India. Our company offered one of its general entertainment channel free of charge for 2 months. That is April and May. We did not charge for that channel from the end consumers. The ongoing COVID pandemic resulted in our company freezing the salary and promotion for this financial year, which is also seen being implemented by most of the companies across all the industry. But what is heartening to note, Dr. Besin, is that in spite of all the losses, our company has not resorted to any salary cut, which itself is a great motivational factor for all of us working for a company like Sony.
Important. That's very important.
Yeah.
Now I may, you see, like I would like to hear now what Smita Chandrasekhar has to say, how her
Yeah.
company has responded, you see, to these crises. Smita, please.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Basin. And thanks to Manjari as well as Guru Raj, for their valuable inputs. So from our business perspective, we are basically audio equipment manufacturers, right? So Manjari is one of the OEMs that, Maruti Suzuki India Limited, one of the major markets for us. And, we do work with them. So our kind of audio equipments, get fitted onto Maruti vehicles or Tata vehicles. So these are the two local car markets that we cater to. So I think with the OEMs we have been working, right, because COVID-19 has actually slowed down automobile industry in general. So that has obviously impacted us in a big time, because although we are not the actual OEMs, we do support them, right? So we've actually suffered quite a bit. So in order to tackle that situation, I think we did a business analysis as to which are the units which can actually compensate or overcome where we are lagging behind from a business perspective, right? So we started focusing on other markets, for example, like JBL speakers, where lifestyle markets with these Amazon and Flipkart sales which keep running from time and in various periods, we sort of started concentrating more, because wherever it is where the revenue we could see a potential, we tapped into those sort of markets, right? So that was one of the strategies that we kind of undertook. Second thing is any cost to the company, right from anywhere ranging to celebrity endorsement agreements, we kind of took a look at all those agreements. Where possible, we sort of brought in time, deferred the payment, and we in fact managed to shut down a complete facility thanks to this work from home sort of a scenario. So we did save quite a bit of lease amount, and that's actually profited big time, right? I mean, in the long run, if you take a look at it. And then we started to focus, like I said, on the long-term initiatives and the medium initiatives, planned, and I think that was executed. So now we know where to go, what to do, how much to invest, or where to cut. Everything is in place. So that's one big thing from a business perspective. From a regulatory perspective, I mean, I would like to talk about quickly on the local make in India policy, right? So with that came another bunch of problems for us, because China, one of the big suppliers from China is actually banned or sanctioned by the US government. So that hit our entire business, because they were critical components for our music systems. So now we've had to look for alternatives, not just looking for alternative, but also to find a manufacturer which gave us at the same price so we could remain competitive, right? So that's another area. And apart from that, from the employees perspective, I think a plethora of things just sprung up, right? Right from very basics, like work from home actually brings us a lot of issues. Like, for example, privacy, is a key for us, right? Because what if the spouses work for a competitor, and no matter how much your systems are protected with all your cyber security, firewalls and the likes, what if the spouse or any other family member actually peeps into your screen?
You have rightly pointed out, because these are the issues which concern not just your industry. I think
Absolutely.
it's across the board. Every
Absolutely.
It's a very, very vital point about
Absolutely.
privacy.
So privacy issues, is the first thing. And me being a privacy law, kind of, what can I say, forerunner, my, initial thoughts were, how do we tackle these issues, right? So again, we had to come up with, right from making certain policies and also revising existing policies, and also reiterating about our code of conduct, which was again sent out as a mailer or a communication to all the employees. So it's, I think, just a matter of reinforcing. And then we also came
Yeah.
up with a bunch of training programs, not just from a privacy perspective, but overall, whatever was the need of the hour. So I think
Like for
reinforcing.
skill development and all that, you see.
Absolutely,
Very good.
absolutely.
Very
And
good,
apart from,
Smita ji. We have to move on,
sure,
because my next
sure.
question is more legal now. It is, although connected with business, that how do you protect your business from litigation during this period over contractual issues, and to avoid supply chain disruptions with effective legal planning? And I'm very pleased to request Lubinisha Saha and Mr. Pandurang Acharya to please dwell on this, but briefly. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Hussain. I'm going to make 2 or 3 very short points on this. For aviation as a sector, and we as OEMs, supply chain is super critical, right? I think there are components, there are parts, there are heavily engineered parts as well, and many of them have licenses and permits attached to them. So it's very important to secure the supply chain, and most of our risks emanate from there. So we definitely had a core committee which assessed the entire supply chain, high, medium, low risk, and looking at bankruptcy risk and figuring out various scenarios as to how you can tackle that risk better. So that's one bucket. The second bucket, as previously David pointed out, is renegotiating the contracts, figuring out ways to secure cost, ways to have less money going out of the system. The third thing was some of the out of the box ideas. I think, as I was mentioning before, going beyond legal. Instead of outsourcing costs, how about insourcing and offshoring some of the functions, be it engineering, be it IT, even functional support? So how can you do a cost advantage within the organization, was something which we also looked at. And the last point on this is integrity, right? I think in unprecedented times, some of the creative solutioning sometimes are gray. And therefore, you need to steer the path to say integrity is overarching. You will never do anything which is even sort of in the gray. So those are my very brief points with regard to how you can do something to secure supply chain, avoid litigation, and do something out of the box as well.
Excellent, excellent. Your supply chain has remained secured. Mr. Panduranga Acharya, please supplement.
Thank you, Mr. Basin. I think Lubinisha has put out very well as to what are the measures very important to ensure the supply chain is intact. And it is very important for essential services, service provider like us, to ensure the supply is intact, right? And we provide a marketplace where we enable services of, right? We enable restaurants to sell their products on the platform. And also we enable delivery partners who are independent partners and to pick up the product, prepared food from the restaurant and deliver to the consumers. What has been a challenge is most of these restaurants have been shut down during the pandemic. Because of licensing issue, the hygiene issue, and the disease being, infection being more spread in certain areas with zonal issues. So we had a, very continuous and inconsistent supply throughout the pandemic duration, and most importantly during the lockdown. We had to rigorously look into this, and we had to really go back and ensure our customer trust is intact on our services. We had to go back to those kitchens which they operate only kitchens and no customer are entertained in the kitchens, restaurants. And those kind of arrangements, most of the restaurants have resumed services post lockdown, didn't have capital to resume their services. We introduced a package for these restaurant partners where we could help them procure, groceries that is required for them to operate their kitchens. Secondly, they were wanting of certain funds, so enabled funds through third-party lenders. And we also helped with them packaging and other materials which we can assist these restaurants to resume their services. Apart from that, we had immense large delivery fleet across India. There are around 1.5 lakh delivery partners associated with Swiggy as on today. There is no supply, there is no work for these delivery partners. So unfortunately, this will directly impact on their income generation. And most of the delivery partner, if there is no income, they will move back to their own native cities. So we had planned something to ensure they are supplied with groceries and their income is protected, and their medical cost has been covered. And we also have worked tied up with certain NGOs, and then we have sourced some funds to make sure that delivery partners are compensated during this pandemic. And then we also started doing grocery deliveries. So that's a makeshift arrangement that we started doing pandemic, which we never used to do earlier. We started picking up groceries for consumers and then daily essentials so got them to deliver to the consumers. So these are the adaptability we had to go through this, and we were very quick in doing this, and I think this really helped us in keeping our customer trust intact during this pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acharya. Thank you. Now, I had actually I'd framed 2 or 3 other questions for our eminent panelists, but in your very elaborate and detailed presentation, you have already covered those directly or indirectly, and those were effective workforce management and ensuring workforce safety, remote working capabilities, and managing cost capacity and skill upgradation. So these have already been dealt with. Therefore, I straight away now move to something which you will be able to tell not only your colleagues on the panel here, but all the other in-house counsel who are participating in this as to what are the best practices for the in-house counsel to deal in the crisis of this proportion and to strengthen your business to thrive, that is providing decision makers and the board with quality risk data regarding rights and obligations. So I will request the panelists to please very briefly, not more than 2 minutes each, because we are racing against time. And I would start with Mr. Pandurang Acharya. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Basin. Number one, we need to be mindful of what is the regulatory changes that happened during this pandemic. We need to very closely work with business, and most importantly, during this crisis, it is utmost important for us to ensure that trust levels are very high. And these are the two important aspects. Thirdly, when we were to deal with our vendors, we should always keep that in mind. We are here to work together, and I think we need to create an environment which makes a win-win situation. Fourthly, we as a team, when we were to work in the company, we need to make sure that we work with everyone in a coordinated way and make sure that success is delivered very quickly. And it helps one, work being an inclusive one, and second, being remain competitive in the current situation. And the last one is ensure the employees' concerns are very well addressed and make sure policies are tightened, at the same time flexible enough to make sure the employees could still do what they wanted to do for the organization, and always be open for the ideas, whether it is employee, vendor, or your consumers. I think that's also very important, because these are testing times. At times, people will come up with great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll request Smita Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, I think just two things I'd like to talk about. One is, being general counsels, we'll have to, learn to collaborate more with the business, because I think all of us do already collaborate. But in these kind of trying times, it's our duty to collaborate more and see, where and how we can actually help. Second thing is, I think, regarding costs, we can actually contribute by reducing the external spends, right? So I think that will definitely give business, a good edge. And at the same time, not compromising on the compliance aspects as well, because the minute you start cutting costs, you would be obviously automatically compromising on your compliance. So that is a big no-no. And apart from that, a general tip to all the in-house counsels is see what best you can get out of your industry peers, right? Because the more you talk to them, the more the ideas get generated, and the more you help each other as a community. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. You have touched upon a very important aspect, which would require a very detailed discussion. But the important thing is that you have to ensure compliances. Now, supposing there is a difference of opinion between the board or the management and your opinions, you see, I would like the other panelists also to very briefly touch upon this. What would be your stand in case of such difference of opinion between the board and you as the general counsel? Just very briefly, 30 seconds.
I think your first attempt as a general counsel should be one of persuasion. I think I'm a firm believer that if you have a persuasive argument and there's nothing that you cannot solve across the table. Usually 9 times out of 10, I have seen that, the boards or anybody in the senior management tends to listen to good reasoning. And I think you also, if it is with the board, then I think you have to, lobby a little bit with your management and with your CEO to get the right kind of a backing for that idea. Because I think collective bravery in situations of this kind can also help to resolve a deadlock. That's my 2 cents.
Lubinisha, what do you?
So I'm saying gone are the days of supporting business. You don't want to be a business supporter. You have to be a business enabler. You don't want a yes or no answer. They want solutions. So the moment you can say, it's okay, you can't do this, but you can think about doing this, the persuasion automatically happens, right? And the second thing is to think of preemptive, proactive solutions with a scenario, new risk, new solutions. If you can get the general counsel.
Gururaj Rao.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Basin, that reposing of confidence and trust on the legal department is very critical, because I personally believe that legal department is the custodian and hence the role of an in-house lawyer counsel during such a crisis becomes very critical. and we rub our shoulders very closely with the senior management people, including the board. And it's, as my co-panelist rightly said, that we are a business facilitator. Unlike in the past, wherein legal was perceived to be a cost center, it's not the case right now. We facilitate the business, we enable the business to go on and work in a situation which, even if it's abnormal, but we ensure that the business is conducted within the four corners of law in full compliance. So as an in-house legal counsel, we need to rethink various operational and legal aspects of each and every aspects of the business, such as timelines, production costs, schedules, legal commitments, in order to adjust to the new normal being presented to the world. So I think that's my take, Dr. Bessin, in short.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Acharya, you did not have a say on this particular point. So very briefly tell us.
I think it is most important to be a persuasive. I think when you believe in something, I think you should have enough courage to communicate to the management and to the board. Collective effort, like Manjari mentioned, it is important when it comes to like push board of what you believe is right. I think that naturally brings in a lot of strength in you when you were to discuss that. I think we should be open to the ideas or questions. I think we should address them and then go back. If we were to eliminate all that options available and finally go back and saying this is what we have left with, I think but that's a great way of dealing with things. Board or management always oblige such approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acharya. Now, since we are approaching, you see, our time, which is likely to be over in 2-3 minutes, I would like all the panelists to describe in one sentence the effect of coronavirus on their personal lives, you see, if they would like to share that. And let us start with Guru Raj Rao.
So I think most of the people often ask me whether I am able to have a work-life balance in this critical crisis situation. To answer that, I always tell that I always strive for a balance in a week. There is nothing called a perfect work-life balance. It's just a myth. What I focus is on work for 5 days and without much time to my family, but during the weekends it's my family time. So at that point in time, the work takes a back seat and my family time is my family time.
Fine, understood. Manjari, what do you have to say?
Dr. Bhasin, I would say that it was these last 4 months, or almost 5 now, have not only been a situation of work from home, it has also additionally been work for home. So I think given that, for working women especially, I felt that, the boundaries of personal time and office time were rather blurred in a situation of working from home, because you can't detach and you just continue, your workday extends. And I think the pressure has just been that much more. But eventually you adjust also to it and you come to terms with it and find the right balance.
Yeah, that's right. The multiple responsibilities, particularly for the ladies, working ladies. Lubinisha, what do you have to say?
So I have 2 boys, 8 and 3. So it's very interesting to say the least. But I think I've become a smart worker over time. And I've seen that routine and discipline helps to sort of bifurcate work and home. It also helps the kids to sort of see and learn the same thing.
Great. Smita, let us hear from you.
Sure, it's been a roller coaster ride, I would say. Right from managing the family and the work, and like my co-panelists have already mentioned, Dr. Bhasin, initially it was a big challenge, but over the time I sort of learned to figure out things, because you don't really have a choice, do you? So I think right from the days where the maids were not allowed, to somebody having a COVID-19 virus in the society, to everything, right? I mean, you sort of adapt yourself, right? And now we've made it like a kind of a mandate that our family goes out for an evening walk, where we do spend quality time together, and accordingly manage our schedules otherwise, right? So that's what I think, it's a learning in progress, I would say.
Thank you. And finally, the final word from Mr. Acharya.
I would say this is more of family time. I could save a lot of time of my traveling, and which I can spend at family at home. We tried new dishes and a lot of other stuff, like some home improvements we did. together with my wife, and my kids are thoroughly enjoying it. In terms of spending time for office and personal time, I think it's about allocation of time, scheduling and allocation of time. I think it's not that difficult. But I'm a great learning throughout this pandemic.
Great.
I must say.
Thank you, Mr. Acharya. So I thank all the worthy panelists for this wonderful interaction that we had, and I hope it will benefit all those who have been viewing it, listening to it, the large number of participants through the medium of Economic Times who have made this possible. I thank all of you. It has been a great learning experience personally for me, by listening to all those inputs which you have given, because you are the real creators, you see, of legal services in the corporate sectors. We only try to implement and guide you whenever some problems arise. You are the real specialists. So my tribute to all of you, and thanks to all of you. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr.
Mr. Basin. You've been a
Thank
great
you so
moderator.
much.